Hello, students. Welcome to Mr. Margarin and Mr. Walters' Flipped Classroom. Today we're going to be doing the French Revolution, creating a new France.
Already turn to the second page of your yellow packet. This is part 2, The Revolution Unfolds, 1789. So, what was Paris like in 1789? Well, Paris was a revolutionary center, and it was very divided. We talked about the political groups. It was divided into these small fractions of groups, and all of them competed for power. Among them was the National Guard. They were a moderate group, and moderates, you remember from our political discussion, they're right in the middle. They're not too liberal, not too conservative. And the National Guard was led by Marquis de Lafayette. He was a middle-class militiaman who was responding to the arrival of royal troops in Paris. He was the first to wear the tricolor flag. And basically what that is, it's the three-color flag, the flag that we know now as the blue, white, and red flag of France.
Some of the moderate reforms that they had enacted by 1789 was, one, that nobles in the National Assembly voted to end their special privilege. They didn't do this because they wanted to, they did this because they were forced to. And some of the special privileges that ended were things like tax exemption, special legal status, and then they all agreed, for the first time in France, that all men are created equal.
That takes us to a very important document in French history. It's called the Declaration of Rights of Man. This is going to be question 3 in your packet. All right. The accomplishments of the Declaration Rights of Man is, number 1, it was modeled after the Declaration of Independence and actually authored by Thomas Jefferson. It actually said that all Frenchmen were born and remain free and equal in rights. They also said that they enjoyed their natural rights of liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. And the third point was that all male citizens are equal before the law. They can hold public office, have freedom of religion, and taxes are now to be levied according to ability to pay. So that abolishes that three-tier system that we talked about. And this goes back to the natural rights that we also discussed when we looked at the Enlightenment chapter.
Now, the National Assembly, one of the things is the church. That to pay off debt, the assembly took all the church land and they sell it. They create the civil constitution of the clergy in 1790, and they put the French Catholic Church under state control, so it's not going to be controlled by the Pope in Rome. Bishops and priests became elected salaried officials, which means, again, that the end of papal authority, the Pope is no longer going to be allowed to have influence with the church in France. And convents and monasteries are dissolved, which means they are basically just taken over and destroyed.
All right. Additionally, the government is set up to create a limited monarchy. With the new legislative assembly, they have power to make laws, collect taxes, and decide on issues of war and peace, and the lawmakers can now be elected by tax-paying male citizens. Okay. Other laws were reformed, and the old court system was abolished. Private property was protected. Free trade was supported. Guilds were abolished. Labor unions for urban workers were also forbidden.
Now, we get back to King Louis XVI, and this goes along with question number 5 in your handout, which is describe King Louis XVI's unsuccessful attempt to leave France. Louis saw the writing on the wall, and so he tries to leave, and in 1791, the king and his family disguise themselves and they attempt to escape France. The escape failed when someone recognized the disguised king from his face on a piece of currency. Soldiers escorted the family back to Paris, and then from that point on, many people saw the king as a traitor to the revolution. And where he was going was he was trying to actually get to Austria, which is where his wife's family was from, and people thought, had he escaped to Austria, that his wife's family might give him an army to come back and conquer his own country, which is why people now thought of him as a traitor.
All right, the reaction outside of France, well, there was widespread fears of European rulers and the British or the French Plague, which was a movement of revolutionary ideas to other countries. Okay, there's now going to be 2 new groups. The Emerges, they are a group of nobles and clergy who fled France. And then there were other threats from abroad, such as from Prussia and Austria. And then we emerge into internal divisions, and that is led by the Sans-Culottes and the Jacobins. And the sans-culottes meaning without culottes, and the culotte is basically a pant rather than to have the leggings. And that was a government run by elected officials and representatives. They were upper-class men. And then there were also the Jacobins, and the Jacobins were a radical group. So think back to our political spectrum. They were usually made up of middle-class lawyers and other intellectuals, and they were opposing the radicals and reforms that were being made in France.
The War on Tyranny. Basically, radicals soon controlled most of the Legislative Assembly. By April of 1792, to spread the revolution and destroy tyranny abroad, they declared war on Austria, Prussia, and Great Britain, and fighting would continue on and off from 1792 all the way to 1815. And that concludes part 2 of our two-part series on the French Revolution.